Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. When I was around 12, my parents' marriage fell apart, and they eventually divorced. For years, I had thought my dad's long work trips and frequent business meetings were just part of the job. It wasn't until much later that I realized those meetings were often with the woman who became my stepmother. The divorce was messy, and it left my mom and me heartbroken, while my dad moved on and started his new family. He married his mistress not long after the divorce was finalized. With her came my stepsister, a couple of years younger than me, who immediately made herself at home in our lives. She was loud, demanding, and always had an air of entitlement about her. From the very beginning, we didn't get along. She didn't make an effort to know me, and I didn't make an effort to get close to her. My dad, however, treated her like a princess. No matter what she wanted, he made it happen. If she complained about something, he fixed it. If she wanted something, he bought it. I, on the other hand, often felt like I now come second after her. While my dad made sure she had the latest gadgets, name-brand clothes, and even a car when she turned 16, I got little more than an occasional "how's school" conversation. Our relationship only worsened over the years. My stepsister and I never became friends. She was manipulative and selfish, and she loved getting under my skin. She once stole my boyfriend when I was in high school, and when I went crying to my dad about it, hoping for some kind of support, all I got was a shrug and, "You'll have other boyfriends." That experience stuck with me. It wasn't just that she hurt me. It was that my own father couldn't be bothered to take my side or even act like he cared. After that, I decided to keep her and, to some extent, him at arm's length. When I graduated high school, I moved out of state for college. It wasn't just for the education. I wanted to get away from that toxic environment. My mom helped me with rent because my part-time job didn't cover everything, and I worked hard to stay afloat. My dad? He never once offered financial support. He never sent a check, never asked if I was okay. As far as I knew, he was still busy doting on my stepsister and trying to keep my stepmother happy. We talked occasionally, birthday calls, brief chats on holidays, but we were never close. I had accepted that, and I was okay with it. I'd built my own life, and I didn't need him or his money. So when he called me out of the blue one day, I was caught off guard. He sounded so excited. My stepsister, it turned out, had gotten into the same college I was attending. He gushed about how proud he was, how she'd worked so hard, and how this was going to be such a great opportunity for her. Then he dropped the bombshell. He wanted her to live with me. No, not wanted, expected. He framed it as a family responsibility, saying that it would be best for both of us if we shared a place. He even offered to help pay the rent if I agreed. I was stunned and hurt. He'd never once offered to help me with rent, not in all my years of living on my own. I'd had to scrape by, juggling work and school, and he never lifted a finger. But now, because it was my stepsister, he was suddenly generous? It felt like a slap in the face. I told him I couldn't do it. I didn't want her living with me. He wasn't happy. He pushed harder, insisting that it was the right thing to do. When I still said no, he got angry and threatened to disinherit me. He used the old family house, the one I grew up in, the one that reminded me of my grandparents and all those happy childhood memories, as leverage. He made it clear that if I didn't let her live with me, I'd be cut out of his will, and that house would never be mine. I will admit I was naive and gave in. I thought he'd keep his promise, and I would inherit the house one day. So I let my stepsister move in. At first, I kept my distance. I tried to make it work by avoiding conflict. But living with her was exactly what I expected. A nightmare. She treated the apartment as if it was hers. She left messes everywhere, played loud music at all hours, and had friends over constantly. If I brought up any of these issues, she dismissed them or complained to my father. I felt like a guest in my own home, tiptoeing around so I wouldn't provoke an argument. I'd spend as much time as I could at the library or out with friends just to avoid being there when she was around. It all came to a head one night when she convinced me to go out for drinks. At first, I refused, but then she convinced me, and I thought maybe, just maybe, we could find some common ground. Instead of having a nice evening and heart-to-heart conversation, she got drunk and started talking. She started saying how I will never be her equal, how my high school boyfriend who cheated on me with her said he never liked me, etc. All kinds of ugly things trying to hurt me. I decided it was time for me to leave as it was getting ugly. That's when she let it slip that my dad had sold our family home years ago. I had no idea. She explained that during the pandemic, his business was struggling, and to keep it afloat, he sold the house to her uncle, my stepmother's brother. He'd been renting it back ever since. She laughed about it, saying that I don't even have a home anymore. I sat there in disbelief. My dad had never told me any of this. I knew his business had taken a hit during the pandemic, but I didn't realize it had gotten that bad. More than that, I felt betrayed. This was the house I grew up in, the place I thought I'd inherit one day. He lied and manipulated me just for me to agree to let my stepsister live with me. The next morning, I told my stepsister she had a month to find a new place. I couldn't keep living with her after learning everything. She immediately called my dad to complain, and he called me furious. He shouted at me, accused me of being selfish, and once again threatened to disinherit me. This time, I couldn't help but laugh. "You've got nothing left to disinherit me from," I said. "I'll be fine without your old socks." Then I hung up. Now he's texting me that I'm disrespectful and insulted him and need to apologize. Now I'm left wondering if I went too far. Am I the a-hole for telling my dad I don't need his old socks as it's the only thing left from his inheritance? OP had to deal with years of being overlooked and treated as second best, all while OP's dad bent over backwards for OP's sister. It's obvious that he's never valued OP the same way, and he's made no effort to hide that. The fact that he held the inheritance over OP's head when it was really just a bluff shows how little respect he has for OP's feelings. OP let her move in because OP was trying to keep the peace. But once OP found out the truth about the house and the inheritance, she had every right to draw the line. It's not fair for him to keep manipulating OP into putting stepsister's needs above her own, especially when he hasn't supported OP the way he supported her. Laughing at his empty threat doesn't make OP an a-hole. It makes OP someone who's finally done with being taken for granted, especially after all those lies. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole at all. Let's be real. Your dad has spent years showing you where you stand in his priorities. You're always the one who's expected to compromise, to keep the peace, to take on the responsibilities, while your stepsister gets everything handed to her. The fact that he threatened to cut you out of a will, when, as it turns out, there's nothing of value left to inherit, is laughable. You've given more than enough already. The moment you realized the inheritance was a sham and that he'd kept the sale of the house a secret, any lingering obligation you felt toward him or your stepsister should have disappeared. Telling him you didn't need his old socks isn't mean. It's just the truth. If anything, it's long overdue. You're standing up for yourself after years of being treated like an afterthought. And that doesn't make you an a-hole. It makes you someone who's finally refusing to be manipulated. Absolutely not the a-hole. It's hard to imagine how you could have handled this better when your dad's been lying and using what little influence he thought he had to control you. First of all, he never supported you financially, not even a bit. But suddenly he's willing to help with rent only if you house his golden child. Then, you find out he's been holding the threat of disinheritance over you when the family home and any assets are already gone. That's such a slap in the face. You're not wrong for finally pushing back and standing up for yourself. It's clear your dad prioritizes your stepsister's comfort and happiness over your well-being, and enough is enough. Your laughter wasn't disrespectful. It was a natural reaction to his empty threats. You've been patient for years, and honestly, I think you handled it more calmly than most would. Laughing at his attempt to hold imaginary power over you doesn't make you an a-hole. It makes you someone who's done playing his games. Not the a-hole, not even close. You've been forced into the bigger person role for so long, always accommodating your dad's favoritism and your stepsister's selfishness. And what did you get for all those years of patience and compromise? Nothing but being treated as less important. The moment your dad dangled that inheritance over you, only to learn there's nothing left, was the moment it became clear he had no real authority or right to demand anything from you. Letting her move in at all was a huge concession on your part, and finding out about the house was the final straw. Telling him you didn't need his old socks wasn't cruel. It was a long overdue wake-up call for him. You've done enough for them. Now it's time to take care of yourself. If he's upset, it's only because he's losing control. But that's not your fault. You're not the a-hole here. He is. And he's just mad that you're no longer playing along. When I was a college freshman and my brother was a sophomore, he came out as gay, counting on the fact that, for that time, our parents seemed relatively liberal and modern. Well, they were not. They became cold and distant, started engaging only in small talk with him around, and invited him home only for Christmas and Easter, asking him to not make a big deal about it with the entire family. He finally decided to confront them over dinner, and they started shouting that he was ungrateful, he wanted to humiliate them in front of everyone, and he left crying. After that, my parents and their siblings started behaving like he disappeared for no reason. Anytime me or a cousin would bring up the fact, my parents and their siblings would just pretend he left for no reason, or say platitudes about forgetting the past without any actual effort to reach out to him or apologize. He is very smart, and right after graduation found a job as quant in an American multinational company. They recognized his talent, and after a few years, they paid for an MBA in the US. I took a totally different path in life, and now I stayed in academia. It's a job I love, but the salary is quite different. I married the love of my life and had 3 wonderful daughters, whilst my brother and his fiancée are happily child-free. Anyway, here's the issue. My parents died a few weeks ago and left everything, which sums up to their nice suburbs house and a holiday home in a nice coastal city, to me. It's not huge money, but enough to pay for my daughter's university if they wanted to study abroad, which I highly encourage since, as an insider, I can tell my country public universities are degrading. My brother did not want to come to the funeral, understandably, but I texted him, "When you pass by, feel free to pick up anything you want from our parents' house, so we can sell it." He was taken aback, since he took for granted that he would split the inheritance. I was taken aback as well, because I never considered that someone who owns 3 houses in New York and 1 in Prague, someone who flies to Chamonix every winter and to Brazil every summer, would start fighting over an inheritance. He accused me of taking advantage of our parents and to pose as a progressive until it does not cost me a dime. I explained it was simply because I need that money to pay for my daughter's education, but I would be happy to give him anything left once they graduate. He then replied that how I paid for my offspring's education was none of his concern. I replied that if he had to be like that, then our parents' decision was none of my concern. His significant other, I have a very good relationship with him, called me today, saying that he agreed with me about the money, but when I said that I did not care about my parents' decision, my brother took it as, "I don't care they disowned you," and he was deeply hurt by that. I tried to call to apologize, but he won't return my calls. Am I the a-hole here? Edit. Since many people think I had no relationship with him and I sided with my parents, it is not the case. I kept in touch with him, and up to now we had a very good relationship. We tried to see each other as much as possible. We live in different continents, and we called about once a week. Me and my cousins had big fights with my parents about the way they treated him. I had almost no relationship with my parents because, apart from being a-holes, they were also very difficult people to be around, and my wife could not suffer them. Edit 2. His fiancé just called me again. He talked my brother out of contacting lawyers, but he's still very pissed. I told Kevin, his fiancé, I understand, and I was willing to apologize and discuss this through. I'm waiting for a response. Not the a-hole, in my opinion. The man has more than enough money. Isn't he being greedy at this point? And no love for his parents, which is fair, and to be expected. If he had anything that held sentimental value left in the place, you did offer to let him pick it up. Your decision to accept the whole inheritance for yourself was because you need it for your child, and your brother had more than enough money for himself, and not because you're as your parents, I hope. If anything, I'm surprised he wants the money. Is he not proud enough to be independent from them? I know that if my parents died, I'd vehemently reject their inheritance, even though I'm not well off like your brother. Also, he then replied that how I paid for my offspring's education was none of his concern. He's an a-hole. Forget not being his parents' son. He's not being a proper brother. Gentle, you're the a-hole, because I don't think you mean to be, but yeah. The inheritance for your brother is symbolic of their rejection of him, and you accepting it is accepting that them disinheriting him was okay. It wasn't. It was cruel and wrong. The money is tempting, I understand. You seem to be jealous of his child-free lifestyle and some of the luxuries that affords him. But you can't separate the gift your parents left you from the fact that you only received that much because they rejected him, his life, his love, and who he fundamentally is as a person. Yes, you're the a-hole. How can you be this clueless and insensitive? I'm 200% sure that if you had asked him for help to pay for your daughter's uni, he would have been happy to comply. Instead, you hold an inheritance as if he doesn't deserve it, as if your parents were not the a-holes that took all they have away from him. He felt hurt because you chose their side. I, 28 male, have been with my husband for 9 years, married for 4. I've never gotten along with his parents and sister, who I'll call Sarah. Sarah is the golden child in my in-laws' eyes. She can do no wrong. This became apparent to me because almost immediately after I was introduced to them, they compared me to Sarah's at-the-time partner. However, outside of these 3, I get along with the rest of my husband's family. Last week was my husband's cousin's birthday. This cousin, who I'll call Jacob, and his mom, I get along with pretty well. They both enjoy my cooking, so I wanted to make something to bring with. My husband and I bought what we needed and spent hours making everything. We get to Aunt's house and I go to set down the food we brought at the table. Sarah comes up to me and makes a face when she sees what we brought, saying, "No one is going to eat that." I tell her Jacob likes my food, set it down, and walk away. After talking with my husband and his family for a few minutes, we all sit down to eat, and I realize that what we brought is now gone, container and all. So I ask where did our food go, and Sarah, kind of proudly, informs me that she threw it out because no one was going to eat it anyway. This is where I might be the a-hole. I immediately blew up at Sarah and said things that I now regret, including bringing up her failed marriage. This I particularly regret because Jacob's mom went through a similar situation to Sarah. Jacob himself also gets anxious when people fight, so me and Sarah fighting like that on his birthday made him very anxious. His mom had to take him out of the dining room. My husband steps in and starts calming me down. Father-in-law started yelling at me, so my husband took me outside and on a walk to cool off. Eventually, we just went home. Since then, I've apologized to Jacob and his mom, and I plan to make it up to them, just not sure how yet. However, my in-laws are also demanding an apology, but my husband says I shouldn't cave. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Don't cave. They owe you an apology first. Not only did Sarah take it upon herself to decide what people will and won't eat, she criticized something you and her brother worked on without even trying it. Most importantly, she wasted food. That is some first world BS. I really want to say not the a-hole, because Sarah was asking for it. You've put up with this crap for 9 years. I mean, at some point, even a saint is going to snap. It's inevitable. You don't owe Sarah an apology for anything. You did owe Jacob and his mom an apology, and it sounds like you already took care of that. However, I guess really everyone sucks here, but the only reason you suck is because it happened at someone's birthday party. Everyone sucks here. Sarah was a huge a-hole, and honestly can't blame you for blowing up on her, but bringing up her failed marriage and topics that weren't related to what she did and how she treats you wasn't a good look. For some background, I have a twin, 25 female, who I will call Lauren. Since the day we were born, Lauren was always the golden child. Our parents always chose her over me, and there were clear favoritisms. Until we graduated from high school. Lauren chose not to go to college, and she started a party lifestyle. So because of that, I was my parents' favorite. I hated it. Yes, I was the favored one now, but I hate the fact that they have favorites. My parents are both doctors, and they expect us to become one too, because their parents are both doctors, and so are a lot of other family members. So when I chose to become a pilot, not a doctor, they were upset and even said I have to become one because my sister will not become one and I'm all they got. I just wanted out of that toxic environment. So I rented an apartment and busted my butt to become a pilot while working so I could live on my own. Now, 7 years later, I'm a pilot and live in a different town far away from my family. I'm engaged to the love of my life, 26 male, and I'm pregnant with our first. We got engaged when he proposed to me 2 months ago, and I was beyond happy. I found out soon after that I was pregnant, and we are so happy. Important to the story. My fiancé is from an upper-class family, so he grew up rich, and his family, including him, are wealthy. When I announced that I'm pregnant on social media, I don't know how, but my mom found my account and saw the picture of me and my fiancé announcing we were pregnant. Then she texted me. I still have my old number and she has it, asking for a meetup. I said yes because we haven't talked or seen each other for 6 or 7 years. We met at a cafe, and after a while, it was clear she only wanted money from me. She told me how my sister had fallen pregnant a year after I left, and how my father had been diagnosed with cancer. She also told me how they needed to move to a bigger house because my sister had lost her job and house, and she needed to move in with her child. After telling me all that, she simply asked if I could give them some money to buy a house for them and help a bit with my father's cancer treatment, since she knows my fiancé is rich. I don't know how she knows that. I said I will not be able to do that because I haven't even talked to them for at least 6 years. She began calling me names and then she left. After that, I got many texts and calls from other family members calling me an a-hole for not giving them any money, even though I could easily do that. I have not changed my mind. I just think they are being unreasonable and it's my fiancé's money. So, am I the a-hole? Edit 1. There were some people questioning why my parents don't have enough money, bigger house, or health insurance. So, after me and my sister, we're the only children they have, moved out, my parents moved to a smaller house. We do not live in the U.S., so doctors don't make that much money as in the U.S. And the most recent text that I got from my mom was, "You are family, so you have to help us." Also, as in the U.S. and in here, health insurance doesn't cover everything. I don't know what happened to their money, and I don't care. In my opinion, they deserved it. Edit 2. Many of you said get a new number, and I did. So now I can finally live in peace without all the texts and calls from my family members. Me and my fiancé are now focusing on us and the baby. We're planning on getting married after the baby is born and a little bit older, so he can be part of it. Not the a-hole. What a leech. Trying to get money out of you and your fiancé. There's no need to talk to them again in your life. Not the a-hole. They disapproved of the life you wanted, while they enabled your sister to do whatever she wanted. You made your own life without their help, as they refused. They would not help you. Why are you obligated to help them just because your fiancé is rich? You should tell them that you don't have the money, and your fiancé may be rich, but he has 1. Never met them, and 2. It's his money, not theirs. You're pregnant and preparing for a wedding. Tell them you don't have extra to give away, and that maybe they should hold your sister accountable and demand she support them, as they have been for so long. I would go back to no contact. They are awful people. It doesn't even matter whose money it is. You could have won the lottery. The fact remains that your mother was entirely happy to go with 0 contact with you, right until the point she figured she could get some money from you. That's not a familial relationship. That's a relationship you have with a bank manager you get a loan from. Not the a-hole. I, 32 female, got married last month, and it was almost perfect. Except for my maid of honor, 28 female, Carly. For context, we've been friends for 9 years. She has a domineering personality. I'm more quiet. She recently started making tons of money, $170,000 a year, and she complains when other people can't afford to go to nice places she wants. Carly and her husband eloped last year. Only family was invited to the ceremony, and had a reception at a nice restaurant 6 months later. We paid $1,600 on travel to be there, and $300 on registry gifts because they're our best friends. Even though the costs were too much for our current budget, we figured it was worth it for a once-in-a-lifetime event for our favorite people. Bachelorette party. Carly kept dragging bridesmaids into political arguments and privately joked to me about how silly it was about how religious one girl is. During brunch, Carly got in a huge fight with her mom over the phone. She stepped outside, then came back and loudly ranted to any girl who would listen. I tried ending the conversation, but Carly doesn't like being told to wait to talk about something, and in the past has accused me of being unsupportive when I asked if we could talk about something later. Wedding weekend. I rented a big house for all the girls, and hubby rented a house for the guys, but Carly and her husband decided they'd rather stay at a nicer hotel nearby. Morning of, Carly was late for makeup and asked me if the artist could also do her hair. We were on a tight schedule. My other bridesmaids got Starbucks for everyone and cooked breakfast and cleaned up the kitchen, while Carly walked around on her phone and interrupted the makeup artist to ask when they could start on her. Carly eventually convinced the makeup artist to do her hair, but then she was pissed about the crooked braid, and I heard her complaining 3 different times about what a bad job they did when we were busy trying to get ready in the bridal suite. She also complained to my husband later that night. Lastly, we received their gift 2 weeks after the wedding. A set of nice wine glasses worth $80. We never asked for wine glasses because we have 30 already. I would have preferred a thoughtful card at that point. Now that the wedding's over, I just want to move on with my life. She's not the kind of person who accepts constructive criticism, turns into a barrage of, "It didn't happen that way," or "You're wrong because X." So I don't feel like exerting the mental energy and emotional labor required to reason with someone who'll blame me. That's how our conflicts have gone over in the past. But I'm an introvert with a few close friends, so I never felt like it was worth the possibility of her nuking our friendship. I still care about her, so I feel like an a-hole, but I'm also tired of being treated like crap. Not the a-hole. She sounds insufferable and exhausting to be around. I don't even understand why you're friends with her in the first place, other than just length of time you've known her maybe. Everyone sucks here. Let's be clear. She's aggressive and probably a crappy person. Her behavior sounds very selfish. But when you constantly avoid every opportunity to call her on her crap, you basically allow it to go on. Now you want to drop her because she's not worth a fight that you've already rehearsed and decided in your mind. That's a crappy way to handle conflict. Handling conflict sucks, especially when you're not naturally good at it. But when we decide to have friends, we sometimes have to have awkward, tight talks to work through problems. Maybe had you done this years ago, you would not have had this drama at your wedding. Sit down and have the tough talk with her. Be clear, be nice, be firm, and give her the chance to apologize and try to make things right. At least then, if she's a jerk, you know you did your part to try and fix the problem. Everyone sucks here. Carly is a snob, but you really need to grow a pair. Introvert or not, you considered her a friend, a very close one even, as you made her maid of honor. If you can't tell her no to her face, at least write a message or a letter.